I think Iran is very different. They put their zealotry above their survival. They have suicide bombers all over the place. I wouldn't rely on their rationality. You know, since the advent of nuclear weapons, you've had countries that had access to nuclear weapons who always made a careful calculation of cost and benefit. But Iran is guided by a leadership with an unbelievable fanaticism. It's the same fanaticism that you see storming your embassies today. You want these fanatics to have nuclear weapons? I mean, I heard some people suggest, David, I actually read this in the American press. They said, well, you know, if you take action, that's a lot worse than having Iran with nuclear weapons. Some have even said that Iran with nuclear weapons would stabilize the Middle East. Stabilize the Middle East. I think the people who say this have set a new standard for human stupidity. I think the issue is how to prevent Iran from completing its nuclear weapons program. They're moving very rapidly to completing the enrichment of the uranium that they need to produce a nuclear bomb. In 6 months or so, they'll be 90% of the way there. I think it's important to place a red line before Iran, and I think that actually reduces the chance of military conflict, because if they know there's a point, a stage in the enrichment or other nuclear activities that they cannot cross because they'll face consequences, I think they'll actually not cross. I think that when he says that, implicit in that is that he'll stop them before they get to a nuclear weapon, which means he'll draw a red line somewhere. And I think it's important to communicate it to them. I wouldn't bet the security of the world and my own country's future from a country that threatens our annihilation, murders civilians en masse in Syria, and brutalizes its own people. I wouldn't bet the future on intelligence. You know, you just marked 9/11. That wasn't seen. None of us, neither Israel or the United States, saw Iran building this massive nuclear bunker under a mountain. For 2 years, they proceeded without our knowledge. So I think the one thing we do know is what they're doing right now. We know that they're enriching this material. We know that in 6, 7 months, they'll have got to cover 90% of the way for an atomic bomb material. And I think that we should count on the things that we do know in setting the red line. You think so, Candy? That's like, yeah. Well, let me interrupt. It's not legitimate. This is a country that talks about, denies the Holocaust, promises to wipe out Israel, is engaged in terror throughout the world. It's like Timothy McVeigh walking into a shop in Oklahoma City and saying, "I'd like to tend my garden. I'd like to buy some fertilizer. How much do you want?" "Oh, I don't know, 20,000 pounds." Come on, we know that they're working towards a weapon. They're not. We know that it's not something that we surmise. We have absolutely certainty about that, and they're advancing towards that nuclear program.
Do you mean?
Well, I talked about the certainty of their enrichment program. I didn't talk about the other elements. And I spoke about the difficulty of knowing other things, but we have no difficulty, as the IAEA report just tells us, about what they're doing in their enrichment program. That we know for sure. And that's the only thing we know for sure that is verifiable and accessible. We know that. As far as the U.S. and Israel, obviously we have different capability. You're a big country. You're several thousand miles away. You have stronger military capabilities. We're a smaller country. We're more vulnerable. They threaten our very annihilation. So obviously we have different capabilities and different clocks. But in terms of what is happening is as Iran is getting closer and closer to completing its work for its first atomic bomb, the differences between us are, and our capabilities are becoming less and less important because Iran is fast approaching a point where it could disappear from our capability of stopping them. Our capability means not only Israel. But I think that I think this is a matter of urgency, and people should understand that. That's what's guiding it. What's guiding me, contrary to what I've read in the United States, is not the American political calendar, it's the Iranian nuclear calendar. And the Iranian centrifuges that are charging ahead simply do not take time out for the American elections. I wish the Iranians would shut down the centrifuges, and then we won't have to talk about it. But they don't, and in fact, they do the very opposite. That's what's driving the urgency of this. And again, we have close consultations with the United States on this issue.
But I was pretty certain, and continue to be pretty certain, that there are going to be bumps in the road because, you know, in a lot of these places, the one organizing principle has been Islam, the one part of society that hasn't been controlled completely by the government.
I think we should have a red line communicated to Iran. That's what I would say. And I think it's vital. I know that people value flexibility. I think that's important, but I think at this late stage of the game, I think Iran needs to see clarity. I'm not sure I would have said this 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, but as we get closer and closer and closer to the end game, I think we have to establish that. That's becoming important because you have to just think about, you know, you see the Middle East, you see these fanatics storming your embassies, and I want to send my condolences to the American people for the loss of that extraordinary ambassador and his extraordinary colleagues. We sympathize, as no other people does, with the United States. And yet, you know that as we face the possibility that a regime that is guided by the same fanaticism would have nuclear weapons, it's become something very urgent for all of us to make sure that they don't get there. And if you want to make sure that they don't get there, make sure that they know that there's a line they shouldn't cross, because otherwise they'll cross it and they'll get there.
There's also people.
What we do know is that the natural protests that arose because of the outrage over the video were used as an excuse by extremists to see if they can also directly harm U.S. interests.
We cherish the bipartisan support for Israel in the United States, and we're supported by Democrats and Republicans alike. You know, this is that there's a common interest of all Americans, of all political persuasions, to stop Iran. This is a regime that is giving vent to the worst impulses that you see right now in the Middle East. They deny the rights of women, deny democracy, brutalize their own people, don't give freedom of religion. All the things that you see now in these mobs storming the American embassy is what you'll see with a regime that would have atomic bombs. You can't have such people have atomic bombs. And I believe that's as important for Republicans as it is for Democrats, important for Democrats as it is for Republicans, as important for President Obama as it is for Mitt Romney. It's important for the future of our world. The fact is that every day that passes, Iran gets closer and closer to nuclear bombs. The world tells Israel, wait, there's still time. And I say, wait for what? Wait until when?